right. Okay, guys. So, good to see you again. Good to see everybody again. It's good. So we were going to talk today, I think, about crypto-friendly jurisdictions and so on around the world. And as one way to sort of kind of get the conversation started, one thing I thought a lot about are blockchains as digital governments, in the sense that they have a system of property rights and contract law and identity verification and so on and so forth, that people can opt out of the current government and opt into that as a government. Right. And so some governments are okay with that, and some are not, and some are fighting it, and some are with it. And so would love to get your thoughts on that, and then we'll go through a list of crypto-friendly jurisdictions and get your thoughts on pros and cons and so on.
Yeah, I mean, crypto is this money layer on the internet, right? And so it's really important how it's regulated and how it interacts when it goes into TradFi or the fiat banking system. And not all jurisdictions view it equally.
Right. And,
it's also we talk about the separation of money and state, and as you mentioned, crypto is very much opt-in. It's not forced or coerced, or there's no legal obligation to use things like Bitcoin. It's all emergent and voluntary, which is very powerful when you think about it, because other forms of fiat money, you're basically forced to use it and opt in.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're consent as opposed to coercion, right?
Like, and money's been the purview of the state, and it's been used to control populations for a very long time. And so fiat is by decree, it's by fiat. You must accept our money, pay your taxes in US dollars. If you're a merchant, accept US dollars, or you go to jail. If you don't like US dollars, you can talk to our Navy or Air Force,
right.
And we'll make you like it. Right. Whereas, of course, Bitcoin is organic, it's free, it's supply and demand, there's no coercive, it's totally consensual money.
It's important that you say that, because there's a lot of macroeconomics textbooks about Keynesianism and so on, but the theorems in them are actually established by, it's not, it's M16 that backs a dollar, and it's SHA-256 that backs our space, right? And that's just a fundamentally different way of thinking about it, right? Like whether it's violence or cryptography. I wanted to go through a list of jurisdictions, just kind of get your views. This is useful for people in the audience thinking about where they're going to build their businesses, where they might expand them, and so on. And so we'll maybe start within the US and then outside it. And sure. My general mental model, and you guys tell me if you disagree, is that DC in particular and other large centralized governments are generally negative, unfriendly-ish to crypto, generally. But small governments or dissident governments or individuals are often friendly to it, right? And so, for example, within the US, Florida, Texas, why don't we start there? I think that they've done fairly well.
Yeah, Florida, Texas are pro-crypto, so there are states that are friendly to crypto, Wyoming, New York historically, but also the federal level, the SEC has been incredibly antagonistic. They haven't created rules in a way to comply, but they've also gone out and sued people. So there's no carrot, and it's all stick, and there's no clarity. And they'll tell you it's actually pretty disingenuous, because they'll say, come in and register, but it's not possible to register.
Oh yeah,
right.
They do this thing where the whole thing, it's so good that we have our own microphones today, that we have our own social media, because with traditional media, what would happen is the regulator would just say, oh, all they have to do is fill out a form on the website. The journalist would report it, and you'd think that it worked kind of like the DMV, where you just fill out some forms and you're done.
Yeah.
But it's not like the DMV, it's like a moving obstacle course that moves in front of you, whatever you try to do. And they're very active attackers of the space, as opposed to like passive form filling. But they mislead the public about that intentionally with like the patina of bureaucracy, of dispassionate bureaucracy, but the actuality of a very negative take on the entire space. They don't want the space to exist, like Gensai wanted to.
Right. And it's kind of ironic that the regulator can mislead the public without any repercussions, but if a company misled the public, you get into a lot of trouble. But it's as if the SEC has they've given up, they don't actually have a vision on how to regulate the future, and so they're just trying to basically slow down the future or stop it via regulation through enforcement. So it's like you have to ask yourself, why aren't they creating rules and regulations? And I think it's like they just don't know actually, maybe they don't have a vision or a sense of what that should look like, and they can't keep up with crypto and AI, and they're being relegated to irrelevance like very, very quickly. And the CFTC is just completely asleep at the wheel. They're letting the FCC, run all over their turf, and they're just, nowhere to be seen.
It's also totally nonsensical. So if you're a company registering as a security, the forms, if you will, on what don't even make sense. If you're Ether, you don't have a board of directors, you don't have audited financials, you don't have a business activity that makes sense that you can register. So it's square peg, round hole for cryptos to register as securities, and securities can only be bought and sold by broker-dealers. So peer-to-peer transactions, payments, all the utilities that cryptos are used would be absolutely useless if they were securities. So it's nonsensical, it's disingenuous, it just doesn't work, and it'd be really easy to come up with a framework that did work, but why they won't, it's hard to understand. It feels like it's completely political. It's not about capital formation, investor protection, innovation, the consumer. None of that's in the dialogue. It's all about political Game of Thrones in the swamp of DC, which is really sad. We don't think it will last forever, but that's the state of play in the US right now on the federal level. So even if you have a home on the state level, the federal level, because federalism, the SEC can sue you even if Wyoming says you're good, your business is lawful, the federal regulator can do it. So it's been pretty confusing.
Yes. The good news is that with, for example, other laws like around medical marijuana or sanctuaries, whether you agree with those or not, there are precedents for state-level disobedience of the federal government. And to an increasing extent, we're seeing that on many other kinds of issues. And that may also be the case here. For example, DeSantis has talked about within Florida having state-chartered banks bank crypto companies. And one of your things that you mentioned there, and of course there being so many millions of digital trees felled, talking about whether is it a security or is it not, right? And the thing about this is, it's like if there's a will, there's a way. Meaning, if they wanted to, legalize this new thing, of course they would. And in fact, there's part of Congress that is working on something that fits it into the current framework, and it's not a security, right? It's like saying, is this car a horse? Okay, it moves kind of like a horse. It does some of the functions of a horse, but obviously it's quite different from a horse, right? It still runs on roads, therefore it's a horse, But if you want to legalize it, you will. And if you don't, then they'll find some stupid reason to try to ban it. And it really kind of comes back to that is they, in my view, think it's not in their interest, and therefore they're attacking it. But small countries or small states think it is, and therefore they're legalizing it. And sometimes that's reductive, but I think that's helpful to get beyond the lawyering of it to, does that faction think it's in their interest? Go ahead.
Right. I mean, the Howey test is a very hard to decipher test, and you need a team of lawyers. And the SEC is losing.
Yes.
They're losing. That needs to be stated in a big way. They're losing major cases. They're not even winning with the laws that they are the experts in. They lost.
Right. And the Howey test is I think it's a 1944 ruling.
Yeah.
Orange Grove. It's pre-internet. It's pre-crypto. It's
I mean, just think about it. They are picking the cases. They are ostensibly making up the laws. They have home court advantage in terms of they're the government.
They always file in DC.
Yeah.
So it's it's a jury of their peers.
And they're still losing.
Yeah.
Right? That's like stacking the deck and bouncing the ball off your own backboard or whatever, a metaphor you want. Go ahead.
And they're also bringing cases that they know they probably won't win, and that's a change for the SEC. And the government has an asymmetric advantage. They should never really be bringing cases they don't feel 100% confident about.
Right.
Especially when you bring it against a private individual or a corporation that doesn't have the resources. And so I think it's just fundamentally wrong what they're doing. The government has the upper hand. They should never be operating in that manner. They should be creating rules and giving people like a happy path. And if people fall outside of that and don't comply, well then sure, bring the full might of the government down and enforce the law. But doing that in a way where you know you're going to score losses, it's a complete waste of resources and taxpayer dollars.
Yes.
It's just deeply un-American on a fundamental level.
I agree with that. And, so now the good thing is, most of the world is not American. So we have 96% of the world that we can still have a market in as we also fight the battles within the US. And of course there's pro-freedom Americans and so on. And there's Wyoming Dow law and Tennessee law and Texas and Florida. But let's talk about the rest of the world, right? So we've been talking about how small countries in particular, so Palau, Bhutan, El Salvador, why don't we go through those? Like Palau did the RNSID, Bhutan has just revealed they're doing Bitcoin mining, El Salvador has made Bitcoin the national currency. What have you seen from those countries, from other small countries that you find?
And what's interesting, Balaji, is I think when we first met over a decade ago, we talked about what country, one of the topics was what country will be the first to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. And back then there was only Bitcoin. So it wasn't whether it was Bitcoin or Ethereum, but this is a topic we've been talking about for over a decade. And some countries like El Salvador have already taken that leap. And I think it's going to be to their big benefit in the long term.
What's interesting about it is, if we had a list of draft picks, I remember that exact conversation. This was literally 10 years ago. Back when it was as crazy to think about new currencies as it is to think about new countries today, in a sense, right? So 10 years ago, if we had made a list of draft picks and ranked the countries of the world, El Salvador would not have been high on the list at that time, right? And it was just being like a random thing. It'd be like saying, I don't know, Central African Republic, which is also potentially going to do it, or Panama is also going to do it. And I think that there's something to that, which is the guy who's coming from out of nowhere has a higher risk tolerance. And so they have less to lose often. What are they going to lose? Well, they have the world to gain, right? And so that's why I think these small risk-tolerant countries, the individual entrepreneurs, whereas the big centralized bureaucracies that have a lot of power and don't want to give it up to crypto, those are the ones that might fight it the most. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, the administrative state is in business for itself,
right?
Ultimately, and the U.S. has gotten really complacent, and they think because they won Web 1 and Web 2, that of course the U.S. is going to win Web 3, but not so fast. The world is mobile, companies are in the cloud, we're decentralized and all over the world, and it's a different, you don't just have to be in Silicon Valley to make it or build something great. You can be anywhere in the world, you could be in Singapore, whatnot. And so it's just, it's a team that has won a lot and is just complacent, the U.S. And they've been on top since basically World War II, on the Cold War. And they think that that's just going to be the status, and think of the people who rule the U.S.
What was it? You had a great line. It was like medals that you carry to your next meet.
Which was that?
It was, we did a podcast and you said gold medals get really heavy if you carry them.
Right. If you carry them in your pocket to the next race.
Yeah.
And I think that
we had a coach who told us that anecdote.
Right. If you look at the ruling class in the U.S., it's boomers, octogenarians who think of the world through the lens of the Marshall Plan,
right?
And that all global currency is settled via the U.S. dollar, and that's under attack in a big way. And I think that complacency is really the word to describe that, as Tyler was mentioning, like the U.S. won Web 1 and Web 2, and thinks there's a lot of people that think Web 3 is just inevitable, it's going to happen. And it's just not the case because of the cloud, and we can all vote with our feet. In Web 2, you had to be there because you had to be there. You had to physically be around the ecosystems. In crypto, where is crypto? It's decentralized, it's everywhere. I don't think there's really a natural hub yet. I think Singapore is vying for it, and in a really good spot where a lot of the innovation is going to be happening here. That's why this conference is here. It's no coincidence, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think crypto deeply threatens the power of government, which I think we all agree is probably a good thing. And you're seeing
limited government,
right? And we're seeing government abuse that power. The SEC Now the SEC, when it sues a company, it's like a rite of passage. It's like odd if you haven't been sued by the SEC at this point. It used to be a big deal. It used to mean something. Used to mean like maybe you're doing something wrong. Now you're probably doing something right.
As an example, can I get a fire Gary Gensler from the crowd? That wasn't that. That was, you can't get a louder one? Okay, but still pretty good. In many places, I'd be like, oh my God, regulators. But the fact that we actually have a totally parallel conference and a parallel media and a parallel group of people that actually all know that that rule is illegitimate is actually 50% of the way towards defeating them, you know, because you're not supposed to be able to dissent, right? As you said, 10 years ago, you're doing something wrong. Now you're doing something right.
Well, yeah, Twitter's so good at this, right? I mean, there's clips of Gary Gensler saying there is no regime to regulate crypto, and then, I don't know, 6 months, a year later saying, oh no, we have it, come in and register. The laws have been around for 80 years.
Right.
And so you see that contradiction, you know, on Twitter, wherever, and it just loses credibility.
You know, one thing I've been thinking about, and you know, there's just like a group of folks I was just saying here, and I said, how many of them are American citizens? None of them raise their hands, right? But, you know, we've talked about, okay, do people share, you know, it used to be people who talked about like Europe and European values and like Christendom and so on and so forth. And then as America rose and people secularized, people start talking about the West and Western values and all that. And I kind of think that that's actually now the 20th century, and that now we really are talking about, if you're in Dubai, are you really talking about Western values? No, but there is still something in common that we have with them. They speak the language of technology and capital and so on and so forth. I think what that is internet values. I think that's actually what everybody here shares. It's free speech, it's free markets, it's voluntary, it's entrepreneurial, it's global, it's you know, the right combination of, I think, meritocratic and diverse, or whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
And it's pro-tech as opposed to being anti-tech and focused on holding on to the present or rolling it back into the garage, you know?
Yeah, I almost think of it a little bit like Web 1 values, and the way you lay that.
Sure, yes.
Sort of the utopia idea of the open internet of Web 1 and what people loved about it. Obviously, Web 2 is more dystopic and a hellscape of 5 companies, but that's what you know, Web 3 is to do, is bring us back to Web 1. And you know, it's not happening in the U.S. right now. There is a flippening. We're leaning in more to our APAC region for growth. We think that's the growth of Gemini. We're not leaving the U.S., but there's so many headwinds that you know, APAC and other regions are really going to be where we're going to grow over the next couple of years. So that's why we're excited to be here and meet a lot of these folks.
Right, and I guess that's the other irony of the U.S. and the SEC being against crypto, because it really resonates with the founding principles, free speech, anti-censorship, and all of those good things that make the American experiment so unique and special. Crypto really embodies that. It's way more than just technology. It's really a movement, ideology. I think that's what brings us all together here. It's not just about, you know, the actual asset and whatnot. So I think America's hopefully going to find its way back, but it's definitely taking a bit of a detour. And you know, it takes someone like Elon to purchase Twitter, and what he's done for free speech on the internet is a remarkable thing. And it's taking it back to those Web 1 ethos. And the web was like a happier place back then.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And I think now it's kind of like we took Web 1 for granted, and now we don't. We're trying to actually put those values into encryption and into code and protect them.
So, right.
Well, thanks.
Replace the guns and the violence with math and photography.
That's right.
Awesome. Noble idea.
Yeah. Well, when we first met you also, I think in 2013, we keynoted at Bitcoin 2013, and our keynote was built around this Gandhi quote: first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win.
Right, the Gandhi quote.
And we're in the fight phase. Back then, we were probably in between ignore and laugh.
Ignore and laugh,
So it took us about a decade to get to fight, but we kind of always knew we were going to be here. We're in the fight, we're fighting a good fight, and it's important for everyone in this room to continue the work that you're doing, to get to the other side when we win.
I mean, the thing is, you know, if you think about it, every bank, every government, every politician, every founder and investor has heard of Bitcoin, has heard of crypto. They have an opinion. I mean, it's actually kind of remarkable. You know, $10 trillion like, you know, BlackRock or whatever is doing an ETF. Of course, you guys were first on the ETF. You should have had the ETF. You know, I'm sure you should put this in your suit. You asked your lawyers, but had you actually been able to launch the Winklevoss ETF in 2013 and it compounded for 10 years, it would have probably been the best performing asset out there, right? Like on the public markets.
Gold's up 26 times, I think, since the first gold ETF launched. And I think the space would be we'd be further along in the space.
Yeah,
and I think it would have enabled all
the that happened, right? It's just unbelievable.
It would have prevented a lot of the big frauds and issues.
The SEC has protected the U.S. investors from Bitcoin. Congratulations.
The greatest investment of all time.
It's not really working.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. All right, guys.
Great.
Thanks, Balaji.
Thank you.